Good morning, everybody. If you are in front of your computer and not in the shower, as Jeff always says, we'd love for you to turn your camera on. We'd love for it to be more interactive and love to see everybody's beautiful faces. It was all girls, and then Jeff comes in, and then Kyle comes in. So you're not alone, Jeff.
Me and Kyle. People will be coming in here. So, guys, good to be back.
Yeah,
for sure.
Welcome back. Jeff's been on a 2-week hiatus to Italy.
Yep. It was nice and warm. We got a couple inches of snow here in Colorado.
Oh my heavens. What was the temperature in Italy? I don't even have any clue.
Yeah, like mid 60s, during the day, like 50s at night. It was nice.
Nice.
Sweaters, So it was very cool.
Awesome.
So quick reminder, if I could on this, Kathy, we'll let you jump in here because I'm excited to hear what you got to share. But just a reminder for everybody, we do this every Tuesday. We didn't do it last week because of the holiday, but every Tuesday. And this is open to all agents, all companies, anywhere. Everybody's welcome. Invite your friends, invite your realtor friends, invite people you've done deals with. There's always good value in here. We've done this now for over a year. We got all these archived. If you want any of the recordings, you can see them all. They're on our Freedom Team Workplace page. Gosh, we got up, I don't know, 50, 60 of them now. So, and building onto that library of material, really good stuff every week. So I'm excited for this one today, Kathy.
All right. So welcome. All right. Well, I'm going to share my screen. Hang on just 2 seconds and let me do that. Y'all going to see probably 10,000 tabs open. No, I don't have 10,000 today. All right, let me go from the start. Well, there we go. All right, how's that? Can y'all see that?
There you go. We're good.
My fancy slide. I'm proud of myself. I made that all by myself. All right, everybody. Well, like we said, welcome. And this is going to be a little bit of a different topic today. And this probably won't take but a handful of minutes, 30 minutes to go through everything. But we're going to open it up for some Q&A and some dialogue at the end. Okay, so today we're going to talk about divorce and real estate, and that little disclaimer down there, because I never know what's going to end up out on YouTube or any other channel out there. But I want to preface by just saying I'm not an attorney, nor am I CPA. So you can take this information to your legal counsel if you as a realtor, or certainly if you're going through any divorce or know anybody going through a divorce, just take this information and just have it as your knowledge as you're talking with folks. Okay, so many years ago, this is probably been 10 years ago, I got this designation. It's called RCS-D. It's the oddest lettering to me, and even what they call it, which is a real estate collaboration specialist -- divorce. Lisa Murray, she was the instructor, and she actually created this whole course / designation. She's a Harvard trained lawyer. She teaches at Vanderbilt Law here in Tennessee, which is where I am at. And I went through this class. I've been a realtor now for 24 years. And I went through this class probably 10 years into my real estate career. And I had sold hundreds and hundreds of homes, and for all practical purposes, was a high producing realtor. And I went through this class. It was a 2-day designation class, and my mouth was on the floor for 2 full days. I mean, the things that they were talking about in this class were in regards to divorce and real estate. I just honestly had never thought of some of the things and some of the pitfalls, if you will. And so some of those things that I learned 10 years ago, which has probably been about 10 years ago that I did this, that I want to share with you today, because I want, as real estate professionals, I mean, we're expected to be the professional, right? And regarding real estate. And like I said, 10 years into my real estate career and hundreds of homes later, some of the things that they taught me were just completely blew me away. Okay, so I want to start by saying I'm not advocating divorce. I've been married 38 years, still happily married. So, I'm not advocating it. But unfortunately, we all know about 50% of marriages end up in divorce. It doesn't matter, if they're Christian, non-Christian, it doesn't matter, what their belief system is. About half of everybody ends up in divorce. And so it's a real thing. If you've been in real estate for any length of time, you've dealt with people, you've dealt with clients that, have faced divorce and have gone through divorce. And so what typically happens in a divorce, I'm sure all of you can relate to this, so a husband and wife, they typically will meet with an attorney or a mediator. And then what does the attorney or the mediator typically do to determine a home's value? Well, first of all, many times they'll reach out to you or I as the realtor. You've probably all had, if you've got any kind of relationship with any divorce attorneys or mediators, you've probably had them reach out to get a CMA. You've also probably had a lot of friends reach out to you asking for CMAs, hey, we're going to meet with an attorney or we're going to meet the mediator. I had a friend many years ago, and I'm going to talk about her story in a minute, but I had a friend many years ago that was in the middle of going through divorce, and she reached out to me and, asked for the CMAs. I've had several actually over my career ask for that. I'm filtering all these. This is prior to this class. I'm filtering all the CMAs to them, thinking I'm helping and, being a good friend / good realtor. And so what the mediators and what the appraisers typically, not appraisers, the attorneys do is how do they establish value? They'll get the appraisal, or they'll maybe even take a CMA, because in a lot of states, the appraisal is not even required as part of a divorce. They'll take CMAs in some cases. And let me actually stop right there and say, this class that I took, they teach it in multiple states. But what I'm going to be talking about is all from Tennessee law and what they taught us here in Tennessee. So some things could be a little different state to state, meaning some states may actually require appraisals to be done. At the time when they were teaching this particular, 2-day class, they said appraisals aren't required. I would think most good ones would want an appraisal, but some will just take the CMAs. And so what do? They take the appraisal minus the mortgage, and that equals the amount that they're dividing out, right? Well, as you see, I've got there, no, that's wrong. And these are some of the things that I'm going to talk about why that's wrong. So things that you got to consider is, what's the condition of the property? Does it have a clear title? Is one spouse staying and the other spouse is going to refinance, and maybe, during negotiation, somebody's going to get, they're going to quit claim the deed? Or is one spouse leaving and maybe it was a stay-at-home mom situation, and now the spouse is ordered to make payments on behalf, as part of the divorce, they're required to make payments on the property. And what about just quit claiming the property in general? So these are some of the things that I want to discuss and tell you a couple of stories along the way. So the condition of the home, like let me just say this. When they were teaching this, one of the things that they talked about over and over again is almost always is more beneficial for both parties just to sever the house ties and sell the property, because there's a lot of pitfalls that can come up if one person tries to keep the house. A lot of times people try to keep the house for the kids because the kids, they're comfortable there. They got their friends in the neighborhood. Maybe that's where they've grown up, all those type things. But many times things after the divorce go crazy, as you're going to hear, with some of these examples and some of these stories. And it makes it much harder on the back end, after the divorce, and now a year, 2, 3 years later, kids, now are being uprooted from their home. So the condition of the home. So we talked about appraisal minus mortgage equal the value. Well, if somebody's staying, and these pitfalls that I'll talk about, they're really if somebody's trying to keep the house. Okay. If you're trying to sell the house, then you're going to split the equity once it's sold. But if one person is trying to stay in the house, Like they need to have a home inspection. They need to have a termite inspection and any other kind of customary inspections that are applicable to your neighborhood or your area. And so, there was a case, and they told us several cases. So I'm just going to give you one case per area. But there was a case in South Carolina where the wife kept the house. The husband, he quit claimed his ownership rights over to the wife. 2 years later, 3 years later, the wife goes to sell the house and finds out that in the new buyer's home inspection, that there is about $36,000 of structural damage to the house. So now new wife, divorce is done. And again, this may be a Tennessee thing. And like I said, I'm not an attorney, but they talked about multiple times for these 2 days. Once the divorce is done, it's done. You can't undo it. It's a legal binding contract once it's all done and signed off. So if things that we're talking about today come back after, discovery, if you will, comes back after a divorce is finalized, you can't go back to the courts and say, well, we had $36,000 in structural damage. We didn't know about that when we negotiated our deal. It's too late at that point. So again, that's why you need to guide your clients. If even one person's trying to keep the house, to have the proper inspections. Here in Nashville, I don't know, I know Texas doesn't, they're mostly on crawls, on slabs. But here in Tennessee, we have a lot of crawl spaces. And even in a traditional real estate sale, crawl spaces are where all the surprises show up, because nobody gets in their crawl space, because they're called a crawl space for a reason. You might have to crawl in them. And so that's where, a lot of times you'll have standing water problems. That's, maybe from inside of the crawl space, you find some cracks on the inside of the blocks for potential structural problems. So again, people, you live in your house in a different way than if you're wanting to know the full condition of it. And very few of us, really get up in our attics and make sure we don't have leaks. Maybe they haven't shown themselves through leak coming through the ceiling yet, but over time, those things will appear. So I think you get the message. So, like I said, that South Carolina case, the lady goes to sell the house, and it's $36,000, $37,000 worth of structural damage that now she negotiated 2 years earlier, not knowing that was going to be a problem. Okay. So one of the other things that you need to consider when you're talking to your clients is you got to confirm that the title is all clear, minus the mortgage, of course, if there is one on there, so there was a case, and I can't remember where this specific, it was in Tennessee. I actually did put that there. So she was awarded the home during the divorce, and then she goes to refinance. So it's not uncommon in a divorce situation where we'll just say the wife might get awarded the house, and then she's got 6 months to refinance the house in her own name. And so she was awarded the home. Well, during refinancing, she found a lien that was attached to the house from a debt from the husband that was even unrelated to the house, but he had put the house up that, as collateral. And so she finds out there's a lien. He had quit claimed his ownership rights to her during, the negotiation with the mediator or the attorney. She didn't know there was a lien on the house. So now she can't refinance until that lien is satisfied. And the other thing that happens too, if one person, is still on the title after the divorce. So for any reason, which I don't know of any reasons here, but if for any reason there's a spouse that's on the title after divorce, they can still put liens on the house. Right. So we're going to talk about in a minute about quit claiming, and, the things to think about and be mindful about there. But you've got to make sure. So number one, you need to make sure that they're getting home inspections if somebody's trying to keep the house, and any other appropriate inspections. Number two, you want to make sure that the title is clear, minus, the mortgage to the property. And make sure, unfortunately, with the divorce situation, most of the time things are not happy. one or the other spouse thinks, they would never do that to me. Well, don't be so sure, because when what does the Bible talk about? The love of money, is the root of all evil. And so when people are going through divorces, a lot of times, one spouse or the other, they're not necessarily living with good intent. At the end of the day, they're looking out for me, myself, and I. And so, it's even if it's an amicable divorce, a lot of times there's things that are going on unbeknownst. And again, I'm going to tell you a story about my friend that kind of all of that happened. Hers wasn't a smooth, easy divorce, but I have heard of stories where the spouse, that my spouse would never do that to me. And then they find out the hard way after the fact, where they can't go back and undo. So if one spouse is trying to stay and then refinance within a period of time, and this is not abnormal at all. It is not abnormal where the courts, the mediator and or the attorney, they will say, okay, again, I'll just say the wife's staying, the husband's leaving, that they will say to the wife, okay, you've got 6 months to refinance. They'll have the leaving spouse quit claim the ownership rights over, and they'll give a period of time for the staying spouse to refinance. Now, just like realtors, not all attorneys, not all mediators are created equal. And so their space is not real estate like our space is. So even if they think about during the negotiations or the mediation of the properties, they might say, okay, Mrs. Spouse, like, we need to make sure that you can refinance this in 6 months. You're going to have 6 months to refinance this. They may have her get qualified for the loan, so they can show that she can, get qualified for it. And she may be able to, or she may not, if they even think about having her get pre-approved before they finalize divorce. But then we all know what happens so many, with job situations, like different situations happen where just because she can qualify today, again, a huge note is if they even get her to qualify on the front end. But what happens if she loses her job? Right? I mean, things happen and everybody's like, what if she has a medical emergency for herself and now she's got to work for many months and she can't refinance? Just so many scenarios, as you can see. So, now the husband's given up the ownership rights, wife can't refinance, or it could be reversed. Husband staying in the house, wife's paying him, or negotiated for him to keep the house. Same scenario, like, it's not usually a good thing for one of the spouses to stay and then supposed to be refinancing on the back end. Or what if one spouse is going to stay, the leaving spouse, maybe that, again, I'm going to I'm not trying to be sexist here, but I'm going to go with the wife. Again, maybe the wife is staying in the home. She might have been a stay-at-home mom. The leaving spouse, he's supposed to pay for the house for, a period of time, like as part of the settlement, part of the divorce. The leaving spouse is paying for the home that the staying spouse stays in. And this is what happened to my friend. So it was a rocky situation all through the mediation and all. She's asking me for CMAs. I'm feeding her CMAs, and again, I'm thinking I'm helping her, helping the situation. So he had, he was self-employed, made a decent amount of money. They had several kids, and she did not want to uproot the kids out of their house because they already gone through enough with the divorce and what have you. And so she got the house, and she was allowed to stay in it. He quit claimed. I think the situation was he quit claimed his ownership rights, but he had to pay for the house payment until all the kids graduated school. Then they were to sell the house after that happened. And so that's what happened. So they got divorced. He's paying for the house for a little bit of time. After all that happens, I'm sitting in this class. Literally, it was actually, I was sitting in this class learning this stuff before their divorce is final. I called her up because what I learned in this class was, what happens if the spouse quits paying for the house? So now she's allowed to stay in the house, divorce is final, he just quits paying. Maybe he loses a job, maybe he gets sick, who knows, maybe he's just a jerk and he's just not going to pay, right? What happens in that case? And the only recourse she has is to take him back to court, which is a lot of money, a lot of, time, everything that goes along with that. So I tell her, I'm like, look, Tina, it's probably not good for you to stay in this house. You really probably should just separate it, just take the money. And, and she was like, if he does that, blah, blah, blah. Well, no lie. About a year and a half after they get divorced, she gets a knock on the door with foreclosure papers. So he was paying, maybe 2 years later, he was paying for a little bit of time. She had no idea that was happening, because the thing was, he quit claiming his ownership rights, but he was still on the mortgage. She wasn't even getting the notifications of the mortgage being late. So she gets a knock on the door with foreclosure papers. And sure enough, her and her 5 kids had to move out of the house. Like, it was a horrible, horrible nightmare, because he didn't follow through with the divorce, with what the divorce decree said. So she's scrambling. She has 60 days to get out. He was paying her alimony and what have you. And so, like I said, it was a nightmare, because she's trying to figure out, now where am I going to go? Like, I can't stay because her alimony wouldn't afford her to stay in the school zones that they were in. On and on and on. You can get the picture, of what kind of nightmare that can be. And so, again, most of the time, it's just best to just sever the ties cleanly. Quit claims. A lot of the courts, again, they will have a spouse quit claim ownership rights if one of them's going to stay. So what a lot of people don't know, and honestly, a lot of the attorneys don't know, and a lot of the mediators don't know. I've come across this more than once through my career. So when you quit claim your ownership rights to somebody, you're giving away your ownership to that piece of property. But if you're on the mortgage, it does not relinquish your duties to that mortgage. And a lot of people don't understand that. So you give your ownerships completely away, but if you're still on the mortgage, maybe you give your ownership rights, they're staying, the staying spouse is to pay the house note for the property. So they're paying the house note until maybe they don't. And if they don't, because again, they choose to be a jerk, or their job loss, or medical reasons, or on and on and on, if they stop paying the mortgage, your credit's going in the tank with their credit. So if somebody's going to stay in the house, again, I'm not an attorney, but if somebody's going to stay in the house, it needs to, in my opinion, either need to be owned free and clear, or somebody needs to refinance it and have it in their name, and the other person's out free and clear before the divorce is finished. Because once the divorce is finished, you can't go back and undo any of this. So, I had another client, and I didn't even know they got divorced. So he calls me 2 years later that he's moving out of state, and he and his wife, he tells me, God sold them the house many, many years earlier. And he tells me that he's moving out of state and he wants to sell his house. So he wanted to keep the house, and she quit claim to ownership rights over. He bought her out. He took a home equity line out on the house to buy her portion of the home out. So he owned it outright. And actually, he owned it outright. He refinanced and everything. So she wasn't on it. She had quit claimed it, but he'd refinanced it. He took out a home equity, refinanced it. So she wasn't on the house anymore at all. But what happened was, she had given up her ownership right. He kept the house. When he goes to sell the house, and we can all relate to that, especially with the time, what this I'm about to say, because of the times we're in right now. He goes to sell the house, and the market had shifted. This was back in the 2009, 10, 11 time. The market had shifted dramatically from the time that he bought her out 2 years earlier or 3 years earlier. I can't remember the exact time. So he bought her out at fair market price at the time that the market was at a higher peak. He goes to sell because he gets transferred 2 or 3 years later. He's moving completely out of state. So now he sells the house at a much less price than what he could had they sold it together 3 years ago. So not only did he not split that at the higher price, he had taken he took a home equity line out just to pay her that portion. So he was telling me, he was like, man, like hindsight, I would have sold this house. He was like, I'm losing money after what I had to pay her to keep this house. So there was another case, and I'm trying to think where this was. So let me think how this was. So wife quit claims the property because over to the spouse because he had the means to pay for the house and she didn't. And in the divorce decree, he was supposed to pay her $30,000 in equity. He had 6 months to pay her for that $30,000. So divorce gets finished, gets finalized. He then goes file bankruptcy and puts that $30,000 into that bankruptcy. And the bankruptcy court awarded that $30,000, as part of the bankruptcy. So now the wife, she quit claimed her ownership rights over. He didn't follow through. Not only did he not follow through, he goes and files bankruptcy. And now that $30,000 is gone and she has no recourse to go back and get it. So you can get a picture, of the things that can happen, for spouses when they're going through divorce, particularly when somebody's trying to keep or stay in the house. There's just a lot of things that can happen. And it really does take a team. As I said a moment ago, none of us are attorneys. We're not mediators, or at least I don't think so. No different than those folks aren't in the real estate game. And I was in the real estate game for 10 years and sold hundreds and hundreds of homes. And all these things I just went through with you guys, I didn't even think about educating my people with. I'm just helping them with CMAs, thinking I'm doing, a great job, and helping them do that. So, just the final thought to share about that. Whoops. All right, I went backwards. Just a final thing, that just to kind of share is, most people's net worth, 60% of it approximately is tied up in their home. And so if you're negotiating on a property during a divorce situation where one person's going to stay, if 60% of the portfolio is in people's home, if these things happen to the staying spouse after the fact, now they've given up a lot of their net worth and they may get screwed, for lack of a better word, on the back end. Right. 75% of the people who divorce will remarry. A third of them do that within 3 years of a divorce. And so that can cause a whole nother level of headache and stress, now when you got another person that's kind of in the mix and having, their opinion in the background. So most of the time, what I felt coming out of that, and really what Kelly, the instructor / attorney, she's like, most all the time, it's just best if the home or multiple homes, if there's multiple homes, get sold and the dollars get divided appropriately at the time. It just finalizes things. It closes that door, it avoids the stress of some of these things after the fact on, one of the spouses that happen to be staying. If any of these things go awry. And they went through, this was a 2-day class, like I said, and they went through case after case after case with all sorts of just horrible stories of situations that happened in the category of each of these things that we just discussed. So that's kind of the overview of everything I wanted to share. So what questions does anybody have, or what thoughts does anybody have? Like, was this helpful? Did y'all learn things going through this?
Kathy, I mean, Cindy, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I've worked with several friends that are going through a divorce, and it is so sticky. And it is best if the husband, if the wife or whoever gets the house can't afford to go ahead and refinance, they need to sell it. I mean, it's just too risky.
Yeah. Have you ever had any of these scenarios that I just went through? Since you have you ever had anything come back and bite your client because one of them wanted to stay?
Yes, because the wife didn't know that I was friends with both of them. So the wife had never kept any kind of books. She was just financially an idiot. And so when she got into this house, she realized when she went to go, I advised her to refinance. And she started looking at it and she realized that he had taken, what is it called when you don't have to pay, when you didn't have to pay your mortgage for a while?
Forbearance
on that property right after they bought it. She moved into it. They were still trying to sell their other house, so they were each living in their own house. And he does forbearance on both houses, so he's losing equity. So she was just in a pickle, So she finally, because the market went up so well, she finally sold the house and made some money off of it. But at first, it was a real challenge. I mean, I was talking to him, trying to ask him to pay back the forbearance. I was like, get me out of the middle of this.
Yeah.
I do not want to be in the middle of this.
Yeah, it's a terrible situation. Vicki, you just shared that you had a similar situation with your ex. I'd love for you to share your story if you're open to, just for education purposes for everybody on here.
Well, I wasn't living in the house. He was supposed to be living in the house, and he was supposed to be maintaining it because he refused to sell it because he didn't want me to get any money. So he wouldn't sell it. Thankfully, my name was not on the mortgage. It was only on the deed. But yeah, I thought he was paying it. I tried multiple times to get him to sell it because he said he couldn't afford it. And he refused, and I finally found out, not by him, but by someone else who told me that it went into foreclosure. So had my name been on that would have totally ruined me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he did quit a good job, so he didn't have to pay me, which in turn made it to where he couldn't pay the mortgage. So he did everything trying to hurt me that hurt himself. And I agree, if you just sever those ties and get it done, like there's so many pitfalls that I didn't even consider that could happen. So this was very, very helpful.
Yeah. Yeah.
Kathy, can I ask you, so you got, let's see, real estate collaboration specialist, divorce. And then there's also, I know NAR has one, certified CDRE, certified divorce real estate expert. Do you know, I mean, is there any difference between them?
I do not know the difference. No.
Okay.
These folks actually are in Tennessee, so I knew them. They do this. I assume that they still do this in multiple states. They started going across everywhere. But I don't know that one you're talking about. So I don't know what the difference is.
I did a lot of research on CDRE. They only have a selected, they don't take everybody. You have to have 45 resale transactions, no new construction. It's about $5,000 for the program, and then an ongoing $1,500 a month if you want to be their platinum member. It's a 12-week program. I talked to a lot of real estate agents that are in the program, and they said that it's very helpful, and yes, they would do it again.
That's the NAR one.
Correct, the CDRE.
The CDRE. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Nikki, real quick, if you don't mind, because you posted also in the chat, just for people that might have missed it, you had a situation yourself, did you?
Yeah.
That you had to go through?
Through a divorce. The mortgage was always in my name. He had to make his best efforts to refi. He had 3 months to do so. His best effort was applying with one financial institution. There was nothing I could do about it. It was affecting my credit to the point where I couldn't buy a house myself. He defaulted. He fell 3 months behind. I had to catch him up because it was affecting my credit. My credit went down 150 points. My attorney said, just deal with it. And I said, okay. Then I caught him up to stop the bleed on my credit. He had 90 days to repay me. He didn't. So then I had to take him back to court, which was another 6-month ordeal. Finally got him evicted. I had to pay him fair market value minus the loan amount. So I ended up paying him well over $50,000 to get him out. And then he did a special warranty deed to me.
And not even counting the court costs to take him back to court and just all that. Yeah.
There too.
Yeah.
Can I ask real quick, Beth Tabor, are you able to unmute yourself?
Yeah, hey there.
There you go, Beth. Can you turn your camera? There you go.
Yeah. Hi.
Thank you, Beth. I know you're busy. So
No
no, I
problem.
just saw your comment.
Oh,
So,
I
so
see that.
you're an attorney. You're a
Yeah,
licensed.
I'm an attorney. I started working in real estate about 4 years ago.
Okay.
So I no longer take on legal clients, but I have a lot of background and have gotten a lot of referrals from family law attorneys and have handled all types of issues during sales.
So curious, Beth, I'll put you on the spot there.
Yeah, no problem.
You know, because like I was talking about, a lot of attorneys, they don't think about some of these things. They just, like I said, they take the appraisal minus the mortgage, and that's how they determine value. You know, like,
Sure.
do you see that? Like, is that what you see? Do you see most attorneys, requiring that they get home inspections and title,
No, in Illinois, those types of things don't happen. I certainly think it's a good idea to, recommend those to your clients if somebody's going to keep the house. But really, for the real estate agent's perspective, you want a solid order to sell, and a lot of times in divorces, the parties will agree to sell, but there's no court order entered. And that's where troubles can start for the agent, because you don't know your authority. You want a price reduction. One party doesn't, one party does. The number one thing to get in the beginning is to make sure there's a very solid order to sell, and detailing the real estate, the real estate agent's authority and responsibility. Because as you mentioned, none of these divorces are really happy. It's usually contentious. And one partner either has a vested interest to drag the case on or to keep the house. Both can end in disaster for any potential attempt to sell the house. Also, you have order of protection situations where agents need to be very careful not to include both parties on emails, both parties on text communications. There's just a myriad of issues that can come up that agents need to be aware of in these divorce situations.
Yeah.
So long-winded answer to your initial question, usually I don't see appraisals in the beginning. Sometimes that happens, and it's a good idea to get one when the parties are disputing value, because you can give your CMA and they can get another CMA, but the appraiser is really the one who's going to kind of settle that price issue, at least here in Illinois.
Yeah. Yeah. So do you have a story of one of your people like that you'd want to share?
Oh boy, there's been a lot of stories. Okay, when COVID first started here, the husband had been awarded possession of the house. He had a teenage son that still lived there. The wife had moved out at the time. There was an order to sell, but the husband did everything to drag his feet to make sure that house wouldn't sell. In the beginning, when I went there, it was a sty, and I told him, look, we've got to get this cleaned up. He wouldn't. We had to go to court to get it cleaned up. We got a cleaner in there, go back for photos. It was back to sty condition, had to get it cleaned up again. And at every step of the process, he dragged it out. We got it under contract relatively quickly. He made up that he had COVID, which delayed the closing. He made up that he had COVID again, which delayed the closing. None of this was certified by a physician. Then we come to closing and they do the final walkthrough. He had pounded tons of holes into the walls, into the garage. It was just a nightmare the entire way. It did sell. through very protected nature, but it was a nightmare the entire way. And the court had to be involved almost every step of the way because of the fact the husband dragged his feet so much. You know, because as an agent, your hands are pretty tied. You can't force anybody to do anything. You really need the people to get a hold of their attorneys to go to court and get things in orders so that the process keeps going.
Well, and to the point that we've been talking about with that, so with these attorneys involved all along the way, that's just less money that everybody gets, because they're all, they're paying the attorneys, more money because the attorneys are having to stay involved, through the whole scenario.
Right.
Because one spouse, is just doing everything that they, can to delay or what have you, or just be vindictive. Some is just pure from vindictiveness,
Absolutely. And they'd rather pay their lawyer than see their spouse or soon to be ex get any money whatsoever.
Beth, what would you recommend, like for all of us as realtors? I mean, the one thing it makes me think, and I've had a couple, 21 years of doing this, I've had, honestly, 3 or 4 situations, and it all worked out fine when it was all said and done. But, it's been a long time since I've handled, a transaction where that was the situation, we're divorced. But it makes me think about all this stuff like, wow, there's a lot of things to think about here, like in terms of just us, like don't just go get the listing and do all the, there's a lot that has to go into this to protect ourselves.
Absolutely.
And the last thing any of us want is to get into, a year later we're getting a knock on the door and there's a lawsuit and we're involved in it because of something we did back here, not thinking about it and not being smart about it. What recommendations would you have, like just for all of us as realtors dealing with this? I mean, it's
number one, just keep your professionalism. At a certain point in a lot of divorces, you become the enemy because you're the one trying to sell the house. You're just trying to do your job. But one of the people who either doesn't want the house to sell for whatever reason, they're going to start getting really nasty with you. And what you can't do is fight back. Always keep it above level. Always keep it professional. Acknowledge their emotion, but don't go down to their level. And sometimes you just got to let things slide. You'll get called all sorts of things. And, I've gotten accused of conspiring with the judges and the attorneys and trying to juke them. I just ignore all that and just keep professional. Know your business and stay in your lane. Inform. Just like in any situation, tell them you're going to do something, tell them you've done something. Just make sure you paper it through emails and text so that if anybody has a question coming on later, you have a very solid defense or trail of evidence of everything you did and told them.
Yeah. That's what I was thinking, like make sure you have a good, keep the history of
good
everything.
Paper trail. Yeah. That's right.
Keep a file, keep a folder of your emails, for that deal, aside, just different things to just, again, do your job. I think get your brokers involved where you need to, like get the help, go above and beyond the help that you would, again, because you want to make sure you're, again, staying in your lane with this and handling it professionally and all that stuff. I mean, just to protect ourselves. Those designations, I'm sure that can't hurt either, to go through that and really, really learn all the ins and outs of, how to handle these deals.
Yeah. So Nikki had asked, and Beth, maybe you can help. Maybe you can, I'll chime in a little bit on this, but maybe you can chime in. What's the best avenue to get in front of judges, or attorneys? I'd say more, Nikki, it's mediators or attorneys versus the judges. But, since you were are an attorney, Beth, what would have, if a realtor was approaching you and they have this, not additional, but that's their specialty, is real estate, but they have this additional certification. So they really understand divorce and real estate at a different level than, the quote unquote traditional, the regular realtor. What way would be a good way to approach somebody like you, where you would even, what things could we say that would even have you listen,
Sure. I mean, lawyers are busy, and so they're not the type of people you're going to want in your database that you're sending weekly emails to or anything like that. But most local bar associations will have a referral directory saying who specializes in, tax law, this law, even family law. Giving a call out or sending an email to those attorneys and just introducing yourself, explaining yourself, it's a good way to get out there. Also, if there's any bar association events that are open to non-attorneys, those are always good to attend and just chat with people. But again, attorneys are not one of the people you're going to want to be sending stuff to all the time, because they're going to drop off your newsletter. They don't necessarily appreciate that type of constant contact. I did that with probate people early on because I didn't have a lot of work in probate, and now I get an awful lot of probate referrals, and I know that they have me in their, in their mind when there's a house that needs to be sold in probate.
So Pop, going by an office with donuts or anything like that, like mortgage people do, is that like just to introduce yourself for 2 minutes? And maybe even having a business card that had, has divorce specialist on there. Like,
right, exactly.
To separate yourself. Like, how does an attorney receive that?
Probably pretty good. I mean, everybody likes free stuff, so. But I think showing yourself as credible and professional as you can, instead of you're just a realtor and you're just, what I mean? Not to say there's anything wrong with that, but just proving that you do have a special knowledge of or affiliation with family law situations, that'll go a long way.
And, going along with that, I would say if anybody decides to do that, right, take donuts or do anything like that, you have to be consistent on it. It's no different than farming neighborhoods, right? For sales, you can't just expect to drop donuts off one time and, you're going to be remembered. It's that consistency of staying, in front of them. One thing that I'll say, somebody just had asked a question in here just about, social media post, I think they put about putting houses out there. So right shortly after we got this designation, I had some business cards made up and some additional business cards. And I put that designation on there and put divorce specialist, real estate divorce specialist. So I was giving these cards out. The next thing I know, I have some homeowner who I don't even know blast me on social media with my card, and they just, anyway, clearly they had been burned in divorce, or they had some hurt feelings about divorce in itself, and they were just blasting me, on like taking advantage of people in this situation and blah blah blah. Like, so just know, some of that, can come back at you. But anyway, it was I was like, okay, maybe I shouldn't just, I don't know. I've kind of now treaded that category. If I'm doing anything publicly, especially with social media and everything today, you just got to make sure, that maybe you preface, yourself, that you're not advocating divorce, but kind of like I started, so many, unfortunately, half the people end up in divorce. We don't have to advocate it, but we want to be able to help people get through it, in the best way, especially, with their home being their biggest asset most all of the time. You want to be able I would think most people would want to maximize that asset as they're dividing, and splitting things up through, the divorce situation. But just a word of caution, in that regard.
Definitely. Kim, do you have a question or comment?
Yeah. So recently I started purchasing divorce leads. It's a company that scrubs court records and scrubs it down to who owns property, their name, their phone number, their email, everything. And it took forever for me to figure out how to market to these people. Like, hey, I hear you're having a divorce. You want to sell your house? The structure of the marketing and the content was really tough. But the question is, do you think the attorney generally picks the agent, or does the husband wife pick an agent? Who usually determines that? And
so Beth can answer this better, being an attorney herself. But my experience with attorneys is, if if the parties have two different attorneys, if they have two different attorneys, then each one of them get to put their realtor forward. Each spouse gets to put their realtor forward. If they're in mediation, because the mediator, they're not for either party, they're just trying to bring everybody together to, come up with a settlement of all the assets. So they're not really for or representing either party. They're kind of like a facilitator is in the real estate space. And in that situation, I think if both husband and wife were to agree on a realtor, then the mediator would be fine with that. Beth, from a legal standpoint, what do you say?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, sometimes in a divorce, the people will agree. If not, if the judge, like in my scenario, I'm fortunate the judges all know who I am, so I've been appointed many times. That can happen. Lawyers can put forward names they're familiar with, so it can happen all sorts of ways. Usually if people come with competing realtors, then both of those are tossed out and a third one is selected either by the judge or by the parties. That's usually how that happens.
Yeah.
Can I say something, Kathy?
Yeah.
I was going to throw something out. Like we're talking in a field that, has a lot of, it's important for, both legal and the real estate agent, but there's only so much as an agent we can do. And I'm thinking, you're walking into a negative situation, right? You got parties that are against each other, and you've got a house that if one's keeping, the only real opportunity as a real estate agent by default is to sell the property and make money that way, right? And I don't want to just look at it about making money, but you guys want to get into a field that is contentious, right? There's a whole lot of things that you have to work through in order to have some type of collaboration. And let's say, and they both have wrecked their credit. Almost every time I deal with anyone that's in divorce, they do things to destroy each other, or they don't pay the common bill they have in both their names, right? So they can't go buy. What I was going to suggest is maybe one thing that could be done as a specialist that works in this collaborative way, is there some type of monetary service that we could offer? Say, hey, I'm going to give us the direction. I'm going to be the collaborator between both parties just for real estate purposes. And in effect, there's some type of service fee I can charge for the time, because, like I said, the only way you can probably make money is selling the home. I just did that with one of my friends. I sold their house and they both went a year without buying. And then I gave them a deal because they were both going to buy. And now one buys and uses somebody else because I was selling the divorce house, and I knew the other person. They don't want to, they don't want to have any type of collaboration. So it's just generally a mess. Anyway, just some thought, maybe a service type agreement instead of by default trying to make money as an agent. Anyway, just
well, and that you're all right. You only make money if you sell in that situation. What I would say is, to me, because we got agents from all different states on here, is you need to talk to your state broker. Each of us would need to talk to our state broker to make sure they're okay. If we come up, if I came up with, here's a service fee that I'm going to help, on the real estate side, you're kind of like that facilitator, right? You're not necessarily representing either person, but you're advising, if you will, based on our experience, things to consider, right? Through this whole divorce. But I would just say we need to, reach out. I would guide everybody to talk to their broker to make sure that the broker didn't have a problem with just, a flat fee service for something like that.
Beth, do you have any thoughts on that? Did you hear that question?
Yeah, I did hear that question. One of the things that kind of triggered in my mind as we were talking about this is, I know we can charge for so-called like brokers' price opinions, but I will say, if you want to get close in with family law attorneys, offer to do free CMAs, offer to do free things for them. Eventually you'll get sales out of that. Here, I don't know what type of necessarily paid thing an agent could do aside from selling a house. If you can get the the parties to pay for a broker price opinion, fine, but you're still not going to make a lot from that. You know, historically, those aren't paid very well. And at the end of the day, at least in Illinois, if they disagree, it's going to be an appraiser that comes in, not us. But I hear you when, when you cut a deal, because I often do on my percentage of commission, just because, you know, they're already going through a finance issue, and then they go and buy with somebody else or do something with somebody else. It's definitely one of the pitfalls. So in a way, you know, it's a volume thing that helps. I don't know offhand, like if there's anything else an agent could do that would be legal or you know, cogent under our regulations, under agent regulations.
You know, talking about just the commission cut, you know, when this is divorce, not divorce, I, a long time ago, decided because I would cut back my commission, you know, with knowing that they're going to turn around and buy a house, right? Again, this could be a divorce or non-divorce situation. And then for whatever reason, they don't buy a house or they go and buy with somebody else. So if I am going to cut my commission on the listing side because of the fact that they're going to buy another house from me, I always tell them, you know, look, if you're going to buy another house, then I'll credit you 1% at closing, you know, for the purchase. I don't take it off on the sale. You know, sometimes I might cut my commissions for other reasons, but if I'm doing it because they're going to buy another house, I do it on the buy side. Just a thought, because you don't, once you, like we're talking about the divorce, once it's done, it's done. No different, you know, when you sell the house and you cut your commission, you know, once it's done, it's done. If they don't buy from you for whatever reason, you know, you can't go back and say, hey, I cut my commission. I want that money back. So anyway,
or at least get something in writing, you know, have them sign it. It wouldn't hold up anywhere, but it's just going to put in their mind like, wow, I need to use Kathy a year from now because I signed something. You know?
Yeah.
That helps too. But I would do it on the back end, not on that deal.
Not on the front end.
Because
I mean, you might decide to cut it just for other reasons, but if you're going to do it because they're buying, then just do that on the back side, you know, not the front side. But we've got about 2 or 3 minutes left. Does anybody have any final questions, final thoughts? You know,
I have a
Beth, it's awesome you've been here, Beth, being an attorney. I love it, man. This has been valuable for
a
us
divorce attorney
to have here.
Perfect.
Yeah, that's great.
Beth, you said that you're okay if people call you if they have a question or different things. Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll put my cell phone in the chat, or you guys can email me. I'll put them both in there.
Cool. Thank you. Nikki, do you have a question?
I have a question because I started getting into divorce like maybe a year ago, trying to break into the niche market and stuff like that. I even did some marketing materials to drop off at attorneys' offices, like how to get through a divorce amicably and stuff like that. So would that be a benefit? Like if I plan on going to these attorney offices and providing lunch or breakfast and dropping off some material that they could give out to their clients, would that be beneficial, or would that be kind of like a desperate scream?
I think it'd be beneficial, you know, like Beth said, you know, you come with value of some kind, you know, you know, now as an attorney, I'm sure they're going to scrutinize it and make sure, you know, that it's stuff that they want to be communicating to their, you know, to their clients. But again, I'll default to Beth here being the attorney. That's great. I could have paid her to be on here. I'm glad you're here.
Yeah, no, you said it perfectly. If you come with value, real true value, you know, they're going to appreciate that. But again, that, you know, don't expect them necessarily to pass that along to their clients. You know, they're not going to be your intermediary. Come with something of value that they can use specifically, not, you know, this is how many homes have sold in this neighborhood. This is the current mortgage interest rate. They don't care. They honestly don't care. Show something specific that you can bring to the table as an agent relating to divorce, you know, and whatever that may be, bring that to them. And food always works.
Yeah, I just
Food
thought that,
just seems universal. Doesn't matter what the
Yeah.
career path is. Food is, yeah.
food's always the best way, but I just thought that something tangible that they could read and say, you know what, there's value in this. My clients could benefit from it, etc. I just thought that that would be a good approach.
You know, if you lay out your specific process, and especially related, show that you're able to communicate, you know, with clients who can't necessarily talk to each other, that you're able to have independent conversations, that you respect the duty to uphold confidences, because that's going to apply both ways, not only with respect to your clients, say the sellers, to anybody else in the world, but between those sellers. If they're in the middle of the divorce, you're going to hear a lot of things that the one party, one, shouldn't be telling you, but two, you shouldn't relate to the other party. You've got to really keep straight and strict confidences when you're handling these types of situations. You know, prove to them that you can do that.
Yeah. I just put in there the phone number that was on my book. Somebody, Shauna had asked what the other certification is. So that's it, Shauna, RCS-D. And that's the phone number that was on the front of my manual. I don't know if they're still doing this designation and courses or not. So it was fantastic, though. I would highly recommend it. And I don't know how it relates in relationship to the CDRE, but if you deal with clients that are going through divorce, I highly recommend that you go through one of these certifications, if nothing else for the knowledge. Because like I said, I've sold a lot of homes. I mean, hundreds of homes before I went through this class, and literally my mouth sat on the floor for 2 days. I'm like, oh my gosh, I never thought about talking to my clients about this. I never thought about this. You know, some of the things we talked about, like why it's important if you're staying to get a home inspection and all the things that I went through, you know, earlier. So it was very valuable to me, you know, so now when I'm having conversations with people, I talk to them about some of these things, right? So, so we're at 11:02 my time. Any final last minute 30-second thoughts, or we're going to wrap up?
Thank you so much.
Let's wrap it. Kathy, thank you. Thanks for putting all that together. Beth, great having you on. That was awesome.
Yeah, Beth,
So
thanks for being
Thanks,
a part.
everybody.
definitely. Guys, we'll be back next Tuesday. It's the first Tuesday of December. Geez, we're at the end of the year already. Crazy. But so it's our open forum mastermind next Tuesday. So bring your questions, comments, thoughts, marketing questions, specific questions on deals, anything real estate related, anything at all. Bring them and we'll just throw it out there and just have an open mastermind. Those are always good, you know, but they're better when you come prepared and you have some things to throw in there. So we can all benefit from each other. It's always good. So just a reminder, we'll do that next Tuesday. But Kathy, again, thank you. Kim, as always, thank you for all your help. Everybody have a great week. If we can help you at all, reach out to us. Okay. We'll see you soon.
Week, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.